Now, Anthony Albanese is in Canberra too. He didn't even mention the rising tide of anti-Semitism when he addressed his caucus meeting today. And he still refuses to say when he was told about the caravan of explosives anti-Jew terrorism plot. No doubt this will be probed in Parliament tomorrow. But it was an opinion piece by former senior defence operative and former government national security advisor Peter Jennings that left me in a chill. Under the heading, "We're a coin toss away from a mass casualty attack" in the Weekend Australian, Peter Jennings wrote, "A caravan packed with explosives is the means. A note in the vehicle with Jewish addresses, including a synagogue, is the motive. Taken together, these facts tell me that there is a growing risk of a mass casualty attack in Australia, most likely directed against Jews." He said one could only wonder at the media management stupidity of the New South Wales Police to issue a statement on Wednesday last week saying there is no ongoing threat to the community. Pretty tough stuff, isn't it? I asked Peter Jennings if the New South Wales Police have it wrong.
Chris, I think their management of this has been pretty poor for the last 15 or 16 months. I think they've been sharpened up considerably by Premier Minns in the last couple of months. But up until that time, what we've been getting is a sort of standard police procedural where nothing seems to be happening very well. And frankly, their handling of the public explanation side of events has actually been very poor. It's absurd beyond belief to say that people should now believe there is no ongoing threat to the Jewish community. It's obvious that there is. And indeed, everything that's happened in the weekend since I wrote that piece suggests that people that want to do harm to Jews and the Jewish community are still out there. So, of course, they should be concerned. That's why there are so many police currently on the case. And I think what we need is to get, a sharper focus at the federal political level to drive this with more energy and more effectively.
Obviously, the police now have this caravan. They have the explosives that were in it. They have a number of people connected to it in custody. Do you believe there still is the threat of a mass casualty attack?
So what we don't know is the nature of the network which exists behind the plot which brought the explosives and the caravan together. It seems to me that the people the police have in custody are not the sorts of folk that would be planning this. And therefore the police don't know what they don't know, Chris. They don't know if there's more plans of attack out there. They don't know if there's more vehicles which have been stolen or potentially could be used in this type of attack. And I think that does give rise to considerable short-term risk. I have no doubt the police are working as hard as they possibly can on this to try and identify further leads. But at this stage, we're all at risk of not knowing what we don't know, and I think that's the problem.
Given we've seen firebombing attacks, constant hateful graffiti and the like, but 2 instances of cars being firebombed in Sydney suburbs. We've had a childcare centre firebombed. We've had a synagogue firebombed in Melbourne. Does it pass muster for you that the Prime Minister wouldn't be told about the location of this caravan full of explosives, that he'd gone 10 days without being told about it?
So if the Prime Minister wasn't told, someone should be sacked. I find it unbelievable that the PM should be so relaxed in his management of this issue that people in our police service, people in our intelligence community wouldn't understand the importance of bringing this information instantly to the awareness of the Prime Minister. Contrary to what Mr Albanese said, this is not about him getting in the way of police investigations or anything like that. It's about how the government deals with a clear and present danger, not about whether the police have enough evidence to make a prosecution. And if Albanese's so unfocused in his oversight of this, that is, I think, something about which we should, seriously be concerned. He's turning himself into the spectator-in-chief, Chris, but that's not good enough. He has the lead management role here in driving agencies to be on their mettle in dealing with this situation. And so, I'm just astonished that he didn't know. And I'm astonished that the Prime Minister isn't outraged about the fact that he didn't know and is trying to find out why.
Exactly. It's pointless being a spectator when you're in that position. We no doubt will find out more about this in coming days. I just want to segue to a completely unrelated issue, Peter, and tap into your brains when it comes to global security and strategic issues. And that is, of course, the tariff wars being set in train already by Donald Trump against Mexico and Canada, two close neighbours, of course, as well as China. Wars often start over trade and tariffs. So just how worried should we be about the way Donald Trump's opened this front up?
Well, we know that there is an element of almost impulsive behaviour at times on the part of the president. I would prefer that Canada and Mexico weren't the two first countries that he wanted to go after in trade terms. But I think his point, which has perhaps not been as clearly made as it might be, is that what he is immediately focused on is the trade in illicit drugs, mostly across the Mexican border, but to a tiny degree across the Canadian border as well. Fentanyl coming from China, which has been responsible for the deaths of thousands of Americans. And the use of tariffs is a sort of a means to try and force more concentrated behaviour from Mexico and Canada. Okay, well, that's where we're at with that. With China, I think that it's entirely appropriate. And what we're seeing with Trump's tariffs is that he is continuing really a hard policy line which began under his first term and was continued by Joe Biden, and reflects a fact that many of us don't focus on, which is that China is still using its own trade means to steal American intellectual property and to do damage to the American economy. And I think it's entirely appropriate that Trump should push back on that, all in the interests of trying to make China a more reasonable, fair player on the international trade front, which China is not and probably will not be.
Peter Jennings, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chris.